Well, friends, tomorrow's the day. Tomorrow, June 5th, Thursday, 2025, is the day the Nintendo Switch dies. And the day the Nintendo Switch 2 takes its place, starts a brand new generation of Nintendo. And with a new generation, obviously comes new YouTube channels, people who are excited about the Switch 2, people who want to talk about it, and people who are going to blow up. And then also, of course, just the new games. A new Mario game, a new Zelda game, a new Metroid game. A new console means a new dream. Because at any point in any Nintendo Direct, your favorite series, your favorite game that you didn't even know you wanted yet, could be announced. And of course, with the Nintendo Switch, dreams came true in almost every possible way. Animal Crossing got its first new game in almost a decade. The Smash Brothers series came back and was better than ever, with everyone being here, every character, plus many, many more. That made so many dreams come true all by itself. 3D Mario, we got Mario Odyssey. That series went back to the sandbox formula that people had been screaming for almost a couple generations at that point. It had been so long since the last open sandbox Mario game. Mario Sunshine, and then we got Mario Odyssey, and it was amazing. Zelda got a brand new look, a brand new formula that people fell in love with. Breath of the Wild changed gaming forever, not just Zelda, but gaming overall. People have still, to this day, been copying Breath of the Wild's formula, and no game will ever reach the heights that game did. The Switch brought along some new IPs. We got Splatoon making its big debut, not as a franchise because that came on the Wii U, but certainly in terms of popularity, the series exploded on the Nintendo Switch with Splatoon 2, and then later on with Splatoon 3. We got ARMS as a brand new franchise. We got some older franchises coming back that no one ever thought they would, like Paper Mario, for example. We got Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door back on this console, remade for everyone to enjoy. We got Super Mario RPG. That game is back in a modern style. People can play it anywhere at any time now. Nintendo went back to what they had always been in the past. Fun games first, amazing games first, and at an insane capacity, at an insane rate. How many games did Nintendo put out this generation? So many. We got 4 Xenoblade Chronicles games. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, the second game, the third game, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, plus Torna, plus all of the DLC for that series. We got a Splatoon 2, a Splatoon 3. We got Mario Odyssey, Mario Wonder, Mario Maker 2, all of the sports Mario games, all of every other type of Mario game you could imagine. We got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We got Zelda. We got Link's Awakening. We got Skyward Sword HD. We got a new Echoes of Wisdom game starring Zelda for the first time in the series. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild both launched on the Nintendo Switch. In Animal Crossing, we got a brand new Animal Crossing game that took the entire industry by storm. We got Luigi's Mansion 3, a successor to the first game rather than the second game, which is what so many people desired. We got 2 different Donkey Kong games, Tropical Freeze and an HD port of Donkey Kong Country Returns. We got Metroid Prime Stinkin' 4. Of course, that hasn't come out yet, but it will be on this console, even though it will be on the Switch 2 as well. We got Metroid Prime Remastered, Metroid Dread. We got all of these games no one could have ever imagined we would ever get ever again, and Nintendo delivered. I mean, we got a Famicom Detective Club game, Emio the Smiling Man. That series came back for those hardcore fans. We got everything you could ever imagine. A brand new Mario and Luigi game. In terms of games, if you didn't find anything that you wanted to actually play on this console, then I question, what do you like? Because I don't understand. I mean, third party as well really came in. The indie games really came in clutch. So many games are on the Nintendo Switch, and if you didn't like any of them, then I'm pretty sure you just don't like games. Like that has to be the only reason that you don't like the Switch, is if you didn't like video games. And also, the Switch wasn't just an amazing console in terms of games. Sure, Nintendo brought their A game from the very start and never let up. But what was more important was their philosophy changes from the Wii U generation to the Nintendo Switch, and hopefully the same philosophy changes they will continue to carry into the Switch 2. They decided to market to actual gamers, not just the Blue Ocean crowd that Iwata was really passionate about. Of course, they still always will be the company that goes towards that Blue Ocean crowd more than anybody else. Games like Ring Fit Adventure, Nintendo Switch Sports, Labo, all of those weird left field projects, they will still continue to do and be wacky and fun like they always have been. And yet, deep down, they knew if we don't make a change, if we don't appeal to people who are actually going to stick around, to actual gamers, to actual Nintendo fans, then they knew they were going to sink. And they decided, instead of assuming everyone's going to buy whatever we do, no matter what, we need to start making games that are better than ever, that are pushing the line, that are innovating, and are also sometimes not innovating. They don't have to change up everything. And that's what the Switch was. It was a big, novel change for Nintendo because it didn't have a gimmick. The gimmick of the console was portability. You could play it anywhere, anytime, and also hook it up to your TV. And that, my friends, just isn't a gimmick. The Wii U gamepad is a gimmick. You just use it on your hands, and then you look at the TV, and then you look back at the gamepad, and it's just not fun. And you need both, and it's hard to play with both. And it came to a point where people didn't even care about it, and Nintendo didn't even care about it, because all of their own games barely even used it to a certain extent. Obviously, they had certain unique features, like ZombiU really made a great use of that, but most people didn't want to have to take the time to port their stuff to the Wii U, or Nintendo developing stuff for the Wii U, because it was too difficult, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense for someone to put their game on the Wii U if it meant they would have to make some weird thing for the gamepad. It was inaccessible, and for the future, any Wii U games that you would want to play that really did use that gamepad, it's going to be very hard to port that game over. They decided to do something a little bit too wacky because they thought the Wii branding would save them, and it just didn't. And they marketed it towards kids, which aren't the type of audience that they needed to be marketing it to. They needed to be marketing it to the people who have actually grown up with Nintendo, the people who are actually going to buy these things, that 20 to 35 range in which people are mostly buying Nintendo Switches. They changed forever. Now, whether that forever actually turns out to be forever, we'll see. But it feels like forever because they're carrying over very similar philosophies into this generation. What do you see with a lot of these commercials that they've put out for the Switch 2? Do you see kids running around screaming about Yoshi Woshi? No, you see adults. You see Paul Rudd playing it with all of his friends and having a good time. It's adults hanging out with adults playing an adult console. And that is obviously the main thing that they need to continue to market. That this is not for children. And people understand that now with the Switch. People know if you have a Switch, it's cool because it's cool to have a Switch. Now that you have a Switch 2, it's even cooler because it's even better. Now, explaining the differences between the Switch and Switch 2, I think have been a lot smoother than it did from Wii to Wii U. There was never any confusion from Switch to Switch 2, except for people saying, I get it, it's different, it's new, it has newer features, but maybe I just don't care about it. And that's completely different than someone saying, okay, if I don't care about it because it's not appealing to me, versus I don't understand the difference. They have done a phenomenal job marketing to people that this is the next thing. Like the PlayStation 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, this is the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. Zero confusion whatsoever. Now, if they had marketed this as like the Super Nintendo Switch, which at one point they actually were going to do, that would have been maybe a little bit confusing for people to understand, and yet maybe not, because people know from the NES to the Super NES, it was just the next edition. But still, I'm glad that they went with Switch 2. It's very clear, and if this console does very well, obviously they're going to continue this hybrid model, which means there will probably eventually be a Switch 3. But as far as marketing goes, they have done a phenomenal job with communicating what the console is. Now, what they haven't done a good job with is communicating everything else. Now, I did an entire video about how frustrated I was about their lack of communication with us, and a lot of that is now resolved because we have figured out the vast majority of what the problems were, of what some of the pricing models looked like, of what the upgrade packs meant, and all of the details with those games and the console itself and the accessories. And of course, at the time, there was also a lot of uncertainty because of the tariffs. People didn't know whether or not the console itself was going to get delayed. The pre-orders were delayed. They ended up increasing the price of a lot of the accessories, but people were still outraged about the price itself. And so if they had to do anything else with those prices, I think people probably would have burned down Nintendo. But I don't care about tariffs or any of that anymore because obviously there was a huge 90-day delay for that, which will eventually be another problem, but by that time, most people will have gotten their Switch 2s and it won't be as big of a deal. But of course, if it does happen, that is still unfortunate. I don't think it will happen. I think from a political standpoint, it doesn't seem to be that that's going to be a long-term thing, but you know, that's a whole other topic for a whole other channel other than mine. I am just here to say the Switch 2 had a whole lot of bad communication from the get-go. The Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, in almost every single reaction video I ever saw, before people found out what the price was, before people found out all of these other annoying and quite frankly scary details at some point, a lot of people were over the moon, including myself. And after finding out the price of the console, $450, then $500 for the bundle, then Mario Kart was $80, but it was confusing because some people thought it was $90, even $100. Some people thought it was $10 more if you bought the physical edition versus the digital edition. It was pure chaos because Nintendo decided not to communicate to us what was going on. In the initial Switch 1 presentation, within the first 5 minutes of them beginning that, they told us the Switch 1 was $300. And you know what? Looking back, that's cheap as heck, and it's really cheap now. And yet, even at the time, there were reports and rumors and people talking about saying that it was too expensive, that Nintendo was slapping us in the face, that it was going to be another Wii U, another failure, and those people were all wrong. So I'm interested to see, is this actually too expensive, or are these people, just the same people, wrong again? Because the Switch 2 is only as expensive as people let it be. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to buy it because it is $450 or $500 with the bundle, and yet, if it sells 15 to 20 million in the first year like Nintendo is predicting, then I guess it wasn't that expensive after all, because people bought it. And if you buy it, that proves it's not that expensive, because capitalism. If you go out, if you buy it, that means it was worth the price. And if you don't buy it, it means it wasn't worth the price. So if no one buys it, it's too expensive. If everyone buys it, it's the perfect price. In fact, it might even be too cheap if 20 million people buy it within the first year. I am not at all advocating for them to raise their price in any way, shape, or form. That's just kind of how it works. So with the Switch 2, I am very excited to see what these games bring, but unfortunately, I think a lot of people in that initial storm of hate and anger and misinformation, I think a lot of those people might be missing out. And maybe all of them figured it out and they know, oh yeah, it's not actually that bad, and they figured out the details and it's all gonna be okay and they're gonna buy it because they think it's cool. But maybe some of those people saw the outrage, saw the misinformation, had that in their head, and they will just continue to have that in their head and never look into it because they just don't care enough. Because I'm telling you, a lot of people bought the Switch because of the goodwill and the word of mouth. People bought it because it was a cheap console. They could buy a light version for almost $150 sometimes on sale and just have it and not even use it, but they bought it, so that's profit. Of course, Nintendo likes to tout that big number they have. Over 100 million people still are actively using their Nintendo Switches to this day of the 150 million consoles that were sold. But I'm telling you, there's something up with that number because most people I know have not played their Switches in a very, very long time. People have bought it, they got their fun out of it, they played their Animal Crossing, they played their Mario Kart. They'll pull it out every once in a while for some parties, but they're not playing it every day like they used to, or developing some sort of habit for how often they play it. They're not doing that anymore. They have decided it's just not interesting enough for them to spend their time on it because it is a very old console. It has been 8 years since the first launch of the Switch 1. Now as we move into a new generation, it's just new. It's hype, it's new, the games are fun, it's amazing. Mario Kart World looks phenomenal. Donkey Kong Bonanza looks slightly underwhelming from what I've heard, and yet it is still phenomenal to have a new Donkey Kong game. I can't wait to hear more details. I'm so excited to play that game. We've got a new Hyrule Warriors, Kirby Air Riders. There are going to be even more games announced in a June or July Direct. I am very confident in that as well. And so this is just going to be a very hypeful year. There's going to be a lot of hype, and that is amazing. But I want to talk a little bit about the Switch 1 and how great of a console it was. And I already talked about that a bit, but now I want to talk more about my personal experiences with it. Because wow, I did a 2017 retrospective almost a year ago at this point, and I loved that video at the time, and I was anticipating doing a retrospective for every year, and that just never happened. But now is a good chance for me to just talk a little bit about my experience with the console. Back before the Switch 2 in April, I did a little bit of reminiscing on my first year with the Nintendo Switch, how I got that console, what happened that year. So I kind of want to go through almost every year here and just give out memorable experiences for me. So I'm going to pick up where I left off in that video, which I believe was towards the end of 2017. I had finally gotten Breath of the Wild back in July, and I played it and I loved it, and I just couldn't stop playing it. Then in December, I got Splatoon 2, and man, I had wanted Splatoon for so long. I had wanted it all year long, but my parents were very weird against like the online gaming sphere, and of course that is a very online heavy game, and so it took a lot of convincing, and I finally got Splatoon 2, and I poured hundreds upon hundreds of hours into that game. I was obsessed. I adored it, and I played it straight into 2018. It was probably one of my most played games in that year, even though I had a ton of games I played a lot. Breath of the Wild, I of course still played years later into 2019 even. I was still playing almost every other day. I loved that game so much, and there was just so much to discover, and I loved Master Mode and just starting new files and experiencing it all over again. I adored it. But into 2018, people were really upset because it was kind of the year of ports. 2017 was the year of big, brand new first-party games, month after month after month, and then 2018 really slowed that pace down quite a bit until the end of the year. I mean, really, the biggest game we got that year was Smash Bros. Ultimate, and that didn't come out until December 7th. But it was a great chance for people who didn't get a Wii U to really catch up on some of Nintendo's best games from that era. We got ourselves Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, a Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. We got Mario Tennis Aces as well. That was a phenomenal game I put hundreds of hours into because I just loved the core gameplay, played it over and over and over again, and there was 1 month in which that game came out that I just played it every day for like 5 hours because I had surgery on my foot that 1 month, and just sitting down and playing that game was really my only like escape from that. And so I adored Mario Tennis Aces, and I can't wait for the next tennis game because I've been obsessed with that series forever. But I also remember like really getting into the Nintendo YouTube sphere around that time. That was when I started really watching even more videos than before, figuring out what was going on with the company, announcements, Nintendo Directs, getting hyped for that stuff. I was really getting into not just the console itself, but everything surrounding it, the community. And so in 2018, I was just starved for a Nintendo Direct, and when they finally did that Direct Mini, announcing all these amazing first-party games, and then they did another one later in the year, like in September, announcing Undertale and Octo Expansion and all of these amazing games. Oh my goodness, Luigi's Mansion 3 and Animal Crossing. I had never played an Animal Crossing game, but I was excited to get into it, and they announced Isabelle for Smash, and it was June, that E3, when I really was like, okay, I played Smash a little on the Wii U and a little on Brawl, but I'd never really gotten into it before, and so I wanted Smash Ultimate so bad. And I remember they announced Mario Party that E3 too. It was an amazing second year for the console, even if it slowed down just a little bit, because they also had Hollow Knight that year. They had so many great games, and I think a lot of people were a little underwhelmed because they had been spoiled within that first year. And I remember some people were even saying this was like the new normal. This is what Nintendo should be doing moving forward, a big game every single month, which obviously is ridiculous. Looking back on, hindsight is 2020, but there were people who were like, hey, if they can do it in the first year, why can't they do it every year? And that just really did not happen, did it? But I remember the Smash hype was insane. It continued to be insane until the DLC was finished up until what, like 2022? They did that so many years. They did so many different editions of that game with characters, and the hype was amazing. I loved Smash. I played so much Smash. And it was also my second year watching the Game Awards for the first time, right? Because in 2017, I was like, dude, I want Nintendo to win the Game Awards. They've never won it before. And then Breath of the Wild won it. And in 2018, I was like, what do you mean? The game launches on the Game Awards, so they can't give it an award. I was so upset that they weren't able to do that. But it was so much fun to see it at the event. Reggie was there. He talked about it. It was great. Then going into 2019, I remember the very first game that year was Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Not a lot of people enjoyed that game specifically, but it did sell a lot because 2D Mario is just important for a console. It's one of those games in which anyone can pick up and play and have a good time. And obviously the game isn't bad. I mean, it had Luigi U on it as well, which is a phenomenal game I loved on the Wii U. But I just was a little underwhelmed, so were a lot of other people, but I enjoyed having it on the Switch because that was the draw to it, right? Like, even if I had bought all of these games on the Wii U, I wanted them on my Switch because they looked a little bit better, they ran a little bit better, but most importantly, I could take them wherever I wanted. And it was around 2018, 2019 in which I started to sell off a lot of my old Wii U games because most of them were ported over to the Switch, including games like Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. And then eventually in 2019, we got Mario Maker 2, which made Mario Maker 1 kind of obsolete for me. And then obviously I had sold Mario Kart 8 because I had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, and that turned out to be the best Mario Kart game pretty much ever. But if I needed some more money and I needed to buy some of these older games, again, for the Switch, I just would sell off these older ones for almost full price because people would buy them, and Wii U games were still a little bit sparse then, and people wanted them for preservation reasons. And so for the Switch, that was just a great way for me to make some money to get these older games again. But of course, 2019 was obviously the big year in which they released so many different titles. It was kind of like a repeat of 2017, even though it wasn't, because it wasn't similar games, but it had a lot of first-party stuff. Of course, Mario Maker 2 was the big one for the summer. I was so excited for that. They really doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the content for that game. It was phenomenal. I remember playing it in handheld mode so much, like making all of these different levels, and I made like 10 to 20 different levels. It was amazing. Playing them all, getting good at the game, finding Ryukar's channel, watching him play that. I adored that era of Switch so much. Then you go into Luigi's Mansion 3 in the fall. For a lot of people, not myself, but for a lot of people, Pokemon Sword and Shield came out that fall as well. Then of course we had Link's Awakening and all of these different games that really came out at the second half of 2019, which brought about a discussion of why does Nintendo seem to always push out these games at the latter half of the year but not in the beginning of the year. And then 2020 hit, and oh my goodness, did things slow down a little bit, but at the same time, because Animal Crossing got delayed because they didn't want to crunch their employees and just make them rush through it, they waited until March, I believe 22nd or 20th, until that game launched. And it launched right when COVID hit, which was the perfect time for it to launch because people would probably have gone insane without this game. I'm telling you, so many people, this game saved their sanity and saved their sense of community and fun. And I can't tell you how many people, if you weren't there, were just going every day and playing Animal Crossing for like 10 hours a day. And I was right there at home doing nothing but playing Animal Crossing every single day. It was my first one. It was the best experience ever, even if it was like a horrible time. Like, I have so many fond memories of that year because of Animal Crossing. I adored getting on it every day, and I remember for my birthday, it was in July, and I was like, oh man, people care. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm not actually out, but yet I feel like people do care. It was so much fun to be celebrated in that game, and it was just an amazing time for so many people to be on each other's islands and talk. And then I remember really trying to get into the turnip hunting and getting so many bells to pay off my house and get bigger storage space. Oh, what a game. What a time. But 2020 was also the big Nintendo Direct drought. They had nothing for us. They had a partner showcase, I believe, in July or August, something like that, but not a single Nintendo Direct, not even a mini, not even a first-party release. It was crazy. Then they had Paper Mario the Origami King, in which they announced like one random day in May, and then it released in July, which was such an odd choice, and yet it worked out pretty well. The game sold pretty well and ended up being a fine game. I enjoyed it. Many people didn't like the battle system, including myself, but still, it was a fine game. Then we had Age of Calamity in November. Oh my goodness, I sunk hundreds of hours into it. I needed more Breath of the Wild because at 2019's E3, they announced the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and we didn't know what it was called, but it looked like it was going to be gritty and scary, and I was so excited for that. And then Age of Calamity really helped scratch that Zelda itch that I had been wanting. 2020, I believe, was also the year in which Mario had his 35th anniversary, and they had the huge Direct in September for that. They had Mario 35, a game that you can't play anymore. They had Mario 3D All-Stars with Galaxy, 64, and Sunshine, which you can no longer buy. They had 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, in which thankfully you can still get. They had amazing products in that, and I believe they also had that Mario Kart thing, in which you could actually have like a real RC car with a camera and set up a virtual course around your house. A great Direct, and I hope they do something similar this year for the 40th anniversary. I loved Mario 3D All-Stars, jumping back into Galaxy, playing Sunshine for the first time, playing 64 for the first time in the N64 model, because I played it, but I only played it for the 64 DS game. I never played the actual 64 game, so it was great to play that 64 game in its initial style, because honestly, I think a lot of people are correct in saying it is a bit better. but also just for preservation purposes and for letting the younger generations be able to play these older games and know where they came from and why it's going in the direction it came and is going. I am just so excited for those people, and I'm glad that they did it, even if for a little bit of time. I wish it wasn't a limited edition thing. I wish they had just made it a regular game that you could buy forever, because it would have been something that kept selling across the entire lifespan of the Switch, but whatever, Nintendo continued to be weird in your own weird ways. 2020 was also the year in which they released that free, jump rope game, I believe, that just helped people try to stay in tune with themselves and stay healthy and not go crazy. And that was such a sweet thought from the developers to just make a little fun game and put it on the eShop. I think Nintendo should do way more games like that. Then moving into 2021, we finally got back to a sense of normalcy with some Nintendo Directs, including E3 that year, which gave us a new look at Metroid Dread. I was so excited. I'd never played a Metroid game except for the SNES one, the Super Metroid game, and I knew how exciting this game looked, how amazing it was going to be, and I wanted my hands on it bad. But before that, earlier in 2021, finally, Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury released, and it was such a weird title because Bowser's Fury could have been its own game. People would have paid $60 full for Bowser's Fury all on its own, and yet they included it in the 3D World package and made 3D World even better. The game is faster. The slowest character in the Wii U version was now the quickest one in terms of comparing them. Then later on in 2021, we got ourselves some Mario Golf. This was the first sports game that didn't truly resonate with me. I still put a few hours in it, maybe 20, 30, 40, something like that, but it just wasn't as good as some of the other ones in my opinion. And of course, later on we got Strikers, which just wasn't good at all. Later in the year, we got Mario Party Superstars, a phenomenal game that really went back to the roots of Mario Party. We got Zelda Skyward Sword HD, I believe, in July of this year. Man, that was my first experience playing that game. It was so much fun to play. The stick controls were phenomenal because I didn't want to play with the waggle controls, and so a lot of other people felt the same way, and it was amazing to be able to play it with just the stick ones. And as I said earlier, in terms of game preservation with the gamepad, if you actually have to design something around the gimmick, and if you want to port it later on, it's going to make it more difficult for people to actually play the game and experience it and enjoy it, maybe that says something about you shouldn't be using that gimmick for this game, and maybe it's not actually that good of an idea. But the motion controls, of course, at the time were really, really cool, but obviously I am just more happy to play it without the motion controls now than I would have been back then. Then from 2022 to 2025, pretty much, we continued to get some great games. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Tears of the Kingdom. We ended up getting more ports similar to Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. We got brand new series, Back from the Dead, Mario and Luigi Brothership. We got plenty of games from franchises no one had ever expected, and some that maybe even you did expect. And a brand new game from Princess Peach Showtime, which wasn't all that good, but still, it was an attempt, and I appreciate the attempt. And obviously, I could go year by year and tell my experiences and how I felt about each game, but I think I'm going to stop that portion of this video there. I love the Nintendo Switch, and moving forward, I can't wait to play all of my new games and old games on the Switch 2. And that is a huge feature with the Switch 2 that means a lot to me personally, because now I can play them on the Switch 2, and hopefully most of these games will also be upgraded by the end of its lifespan. Mario Odyssey is a game I want to jump back into, 3D World, Link's Awakening, all getting free updates on day one, and I can't wait to play the games how I kind of feel like they were originally meant to be played. These games are going to look better than ever, they're going to feel better than ever, and of course the loading times will be better for pretty much every game. The frame rates might even be inherently better for some of these games that don't have free upgrades or Switch 2 editions, but at any point, our favorite games could get Switch 2 editions or free upgrades, and we can experience them again, except better. There's a big viral video going around right now of Scarlet and Violet being 60 frames per second. That game was awful on the Nintendo Switch. It had no business running as poorly as it did. And now it looks a lot better in terms of raw graphics, not necessarily in terms of art style or vision, but still, it looks a lot better and it runs smoother. And I hope a lot of games that people enjoy on the Nintendo Switch will be better on the Switch too. And also, I'm just kind of using this as a talk about whatever I want video. Switch 2 pre-orders were crazy, and I was able to get mine from the My Nintendo store, and I canceled mine from Walmart even though I knew the Walmart one would be here at 9 a.m. June 5th. Because I wanted the Mario Kart World bundle, and I didn't want to pay the extra $30 for Mario Kart World. man, am I probably going to regret that decision, because I reached out to the Nintendo customer support today and I asked, when do they anticipate these things to start shipping? Do they anticipate it to be there on launch day? And of course, Nintendo has not made any promises like that whatsoever, but I paid a little bit extra for shipping, so I was hoping maybe it would be there on launch day. And we were on the call for a while, and then basically they just said what I already knew, which was within 2 business days. So there is unfortunately a real reality that I don't get my Switch 2 until Monday. Monday, June 9th, rather than June 5th, if I had just kept my Walmart pre-order, which I'm kind of regretting at this point, but you know what? It is what it is. And as I'm sitting here editing this video right now, I just saw here on the screen, my Switch 2 is expected to be here June 5th tomorrow by 12 p.m. by noon. It could be even earlier than that. It says by noon, which is usually like the latest they will ever do it unless it gets delayed. This is so freaking exciting, and I will have my Switch 2 tomorrow to make some good videos, so stay tuned for that. I am so excited for this console, but I'm not gonna like die if I don't get it on June 5th. I really do want it for some content, but it is what it is. So I'm just gonna do what I can and make the best of what I've got. And I'm sure plenty of people will have that covered. First impressions, unboxings, all that. I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to experience a brand new generation with you all on this channel, because this channel started a little over a year ago. I thought last year was the year the Switch 2 was going to come out, and I thought, let me get ahead of that. I love Nintendo. I love making videos. I want to try to see what I can do with this channel, and it has grown at a rate I never could have anticipated. It is doing so well, and I am so thankful to you for that, and I cannot wait to start this new generation and continue on with new content for you guys. So thank you for sticking with me. I hope you continue to do so for the Switch 2 generation. This is my last video pre-Nintendo Switch 2, the last video of the Switch era. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful to you, and I hope that you will continue to stick around, because you are phenomenal and you are the only reason I am here. So thank you once more. Make sure you like and subscribe today's video if you enjoyed the content. Click that notification bell to know when my videos come out, and consider joining my membership program to get early access to all my videos, as well as just supporting me as a content creator. Link to that is in the description. I appreciate your support. Click on the left side of the screen if you want to see my predictions for how the Switch 2 will succeed, what numbers does that look like, how will the game sell, all of that. And click on the right side of the screen if you want to see what I was talking about earlier with Nintendo's lack of communication. Thank you once more for making it to the end of the video. You make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.